The Mafia's Good Girl, Chapter 21. Damon's Point of View. 3 days later. "Are you a good girl, Violet?" he said as he rubbed against her so very slowly and sensually. "Only good girls get to come." "Yes, I am." "Please, tell me you're my good girl." Violet didn't immediately respond, so Damon slapped her ass demandingly. "Say it," he roared. "I'm your good girl, Damon. I'm your good little girl." Violet whimpered helplessly. "Yes, you are." Damon stifled a laugh and picked up the pace of his thrusts. She felt so warm and so tight that Damon was having trouble containing himself. It had been a while since he was feeling this way about a girl, and he was determined to make it last. He maintained a strong and steady rhythm as he pounded so deep and hard, like he was going to break her in half. "Now come for daddy, baby girl." And just like that, Violet came unraveling underneath him. She let out a loud scream as the powerful explosion washed over her body. Damon smiled triumphantly at how obedient her body was to his command. Her walls clenched tightly around his shaft, and Damon almost lost it right then and there. He groaned appreciatively and slowed down his thrusts as he grabbed Violet's arms and pulled them behind her back, arching her body to mold onto his. Violet couldn't keep her eyes open anymore, and her body was at Damon's complete mercy. He continued plunging into her again and again until all Violet could see were the stars. They had been at this for hours, and now the dawn was breaking. But still, Damon was showing no signs of slowing down. He let her have a moment to ride down her orgasm before slowly building her up again. "Oh, master, yes, I'm coming." Damon opened his eyes and saw Sabrina sprawled naked underneath him. His mind was taking him back to the night he took Violet's virginity, and it kept reenacting that moment. When he saw that it was Sabrina and not Violet, Damon felt weirdly frustrated. He pulled himself out of her and staggered back. Sabrina looked up at him with a flustered look. "Master?" she asked. "I'm done with you," Damon said as he pulled up his pants. "Get your stuff and get out." "What?" she gaped. "Don't forget to sign the paperwork, and you'll get your last paycheck." He turned his head without looking at her and walked to the door. "You're not seriously kicking me out, are you? Do I look like I'm joking?" "But we've had such a great time together," Sabrina pleaded. She got up to her feet and stepped in between Damon and the door. "This was the most amazing 3 weeks of my life. Don't tell me you don't feel the same way." She batted her eyes and put a hand on his chest. Damon's gaze was cold and unforgiving as he swatted her hand in annoyance. "You're getting on my last nerve," he hissed. Sabrina's jaw fell open as Damon shoved her aside and he walked out the door, leaving her alone inside the playroom. Damon was about to walk out of his office when he heard Sabrina calling out for him. "You're gonna regret this, Damon." I highly doubt that." Damon stifled a dry laugh and kept walking. She was just another number to him. She wasn't anything special, and now he was bored of her. Even 3 weeks was pushing it. She should have been gone long before that. Damon grabbed a fresh glass of whiskey from the bar before exiting his office. Though it was already late at night, Damon wasn't tired, so he ended up wandering aimlessly to the garden for some fresh night air. For the past 3 days, Damon had been having trouble sleeping, even more than usual. He would go to bed at 5 a.m. and wake up at 6. He was tired and restless, but nothing seemed to help. No alcohol or cigarettes, and not even his collections of girls that usually entertained and pleased him, didn't seem to be working either. Damon stood by his lonesome with a glass of whiskey in his hand atop a hill in his garden. The moonlight was shining brightly above, and he was facing the estate. He saw the light in the living room was turned on and 2 guys in black suits were escorting Sabrina out of the estate. That was normally how things went down around here. Whenever Damon got tired of a girl, his men would make sure she signed the required paperwork before paying her and returning her back to the world. Then they'd find new girls for Damon to play with and bring them back to the estate. Violet was supposed to be treated that way, but she was a little different. "That's the third girl you kicked out today," a familiar voice spoke from behind Damon, pulling him out of his train of thought. Damon turned his head to find Talia standing before him. She was wearing her nightgown and robe. "There will always be more of where that came from," Damon shrugged simply. "What are you doing out here at this hour?" "I just randomly woke up and I saw you walking out to the garden," Talia replied. "What's wrong with Sabrina? I thought you like her. You kept her as your number one for weeks." "Exactly. And now it's getting boring. Time for a change," Damon chuckled. Talia narrowed her eyes at him and crossed her arms. She was not so silently judging him, but he didn't mind. "You want to know what I think, Damon?" "Nope. I think you're trying to overcompensate." Damon clearly didn't want to hear Talia's opinion, but she was adamant about giving it to him anyway. He rolled his eyes and sipped his drink as Talia continued speaking. "You actually still want her around, don't you?" She pressed on. "But you had to let her go, and now you're looking for ways to fill the void." "There's no void." "Sure, and you're not drinking whiskey at 3 a.m. for 3 days straight." Damon shot a look at Talia, and she raised her eyebrows at him challengingly. As much as he didn't want to admit it, Damon knew Talia was right about something. "She's right. I shouldn't have agreed to let her go so fast. If she's what you want, stop trying to replace her with someone else and just get her back," she said again. "She's not what I want," Damon hissed. "I don't want anyone. Every girl is the same. It's just about a means to an end." "Blah, blah, blah, yeah, right." Talia cut him off and rolled her eyes. "I've seen you, Damon. I know when you're just treating girls like they're your property and when you really like someone." "I don't like her." "Not like that," Damon insisted. "I just find her a little intriguing. That's all." "More intriguing than any of the girls around the house?" Talia asked with her head leaned to the side. "That should tell you something." "Yeah. Means I should have kept around a little while longer before throwing her out," he chuckled dryly. Damon finished the drink in his hand, and he stared at the empty crystal glass for a moment. Talia stood and studied his expression. "So what are you gonna do now?" she asked. "Find a new number one. Rinse and repeat?" Damon paused for a beat before answering. "Nah, I think I'm gonna try something new this time around." "Oh?" Talia looked intriguing. "And what would that be?" "It's no fun telling you. You'll just have to wait and see," he laughed. "Sure. You're Damon Van Zandt. You always get what you want." One way or another, Talia rolled her eyes again before crossing past him, walking back to her cottage. Damon couldn't help the smile forming on his face. Talia was one of his oldest friends, and she knew him very well. He didn't have to tell her his plans, and she probably already knew. Hell yeah, I'll get her back. One way or another. 3 days later. Violet's point of view. "Violet, we need you to restock the bar." "Danny," the bar owner yelled. "Coming," Violet replied, walking out of the supply closet in the Union. Almost a week had passed since she left the Van Zandt estate, $1 million richer, but not a lot of things had changed in Violet's daily life. She was still working 2 jobs while taking care of her mom. Violet was planning to quit one of her jobs so she could stay at home more, but that plan went down the drain a few days ago. Violet and Dylan went to pay off their family debts only to find out that the interests had almost doubled since a large chunk of the debt remained unpaid for years. Violet thought that her dad's debt totaled around $250,000, but it ended up being $700,000 now. It had almost tripled due to the high interests. Dylan wanted to start a fight and curse at everyone, but Violet told him to be quiet and pay off everything anyway. It was a mistake that their father decided to get a loan from these sharks, and it was up to her to fix this mess once and for all. After paying off the debt, their mother's medical bills, and the mortgage, Violet was left with $0 to her name. She had never seen so much money went in and out of her account, and it all happened in a matter of days. Violet had so many plans for that money. She wanted to help send Dylan back to college, and she was even thinking of saving up to open her own business. Unfortunately, all those plans were now long gone, and Dylan went back to working at the union, right alongside Violet. "I'm gonna have to head off early to go to this marriage counselor with my wife. Are you gonna be okay manning the bar on your own tonight?" Danny said as he leaned against the bar. Danny, the owner of the union, was a man in his late 40s with long white hair tied into a ponytail. "It's a Monday night. We'll probably get 3 customers max," Violet said as she stocked the bar with more bottles of liquor. "Don't worry about me, and say hi to Janine." "Thanks, I will." Danny nodded his head and started walking away. But then, he stopped for a beat and said, "And oh, Dylan will be back before midnight to help you close up." "Got it?" Violet replied. "Bye, Violet." "Bye, Danny." Danny walked out of the bar and left Violet in charge for the night. Dylan was out to do business with a supplier, and Danny had that family thing. Violet was never left on her own like this before, but tonight was a pretty slow night. There were only about 2 customers, and they were seated at the table. There was no one going up to her at the bar, so she spent the next half an hour cleaning and restocking her drinks. "Hey miss, can I get a Long Island iced tea?" Violet heard a man's voice calling out to her as she was restocking the fridge under the bar. Violet popped her head up and saw a middle-aged man with a balding head and muscular build standing in front of the bar. "Sure," Violet replied. She proceeded to make the man's order, and he stood by watching her. Violet wasn't paying much attention to him, but the man was paying a lot of attention to her. He watched the way her hands moved skillfully to make the order, and he noticed how her chest was moving when she shook the drink. The man gulped instinctively. "Here you go, 1 Long Island iced tea," she said as she put the drink in front of him. "There's too much ice in here, darling." The man pushed the glass back to her. "You're gonna have to remake this for me." Violet used the standard amount of ice required for that drink. She didn't put too much, but since the customer is always right, she had no option but to obey. "Okay, how much ice do you want?" she asked. "Just 2 cubes," he replied. He was smiling a sly smile, and Violet didn't like that very much. Violet went to grab the glass back from him, but the man purposefully held onto the glass for a second before letting her take it away. What a weirdo. Violet rolled her eyes internally as she threw out the contents and started a new drink. She made the same exact drink, except with only 2 ice cubes. The man kept his gaze on her, and he was starting to make her feel a little uncomfortable. "A Long Island iced tea, with 2 ice cubes. Enjoy," Violet said as she placed the new drink in front of the man. "Thank you," he said, and he received the drink. Violet took a few steps away from him and busied herself with other tasks. She thought the man would take the hint and leave her alone, but no. He followed her and sat right in front of her again. "You know, you are a very pretty girl," he said. Violet didn't want to be rude, but she didn't want to be too friendly either. She just gave him a small smile and continued wiping the beer glasses. "How long have you been working here?" he asked rather noisily. "Long enough," she replied. "How old are you?" "That's not really your business, is it?" She sighed. "Oh, so feisty," he chuckled. Violet ignored his comment and walked to the other side of the bar, away from him. She pretended to be busy with the register, but he followed her yet again. "Playing hard to get, huh?" he said with that sinister smile. "Tell you what, sweetheart, you don't need to play games with me. We can get right down to business." "How much?" "Excuse me?" Violet gaped. "Young little thing like you, I'll give you 200 for an hour. How about that?" Violet was glaring daggers at him, but he continued on shamelessly. Violet had to restrain herself from smacking that stupid smile off his stupid face. "Sir, I suggest you finish your drink and pay the bill before I call the cops." "Oh, come on. Don't be so uptight," the old man cut her off. "I promise I'll make it worth your while, Before Violet could say anything in response, the old man reached over the counter and grabbed her hand. Violet tried to pull away, but he was a lot stronger than she thought. "Get your hands off of me," Violet shouted. "And who are you to give me orders?" He snickered and gripped her hand tighter. "Don't you know who I am?" Violet looked around to see if there was anyone who could help her, but she just now realized that the whole place was empty except for the two of them. Violet knew not to panic because there was an emergency call button underneath the desk. She just had to find a way to reach it. "I don't care who you are, and you better get your hands off me right now," Violet said to the man in a threatening tone. She was just trying her hardest to remain strong. "Or what?" he challenged. His other hand swiped his jacket to the side, and Violet caught a glimpse of a handgun tucked behind his belt. Oh no. Violet shuddered in fear instinctively. The man caught it too, and the ugly smile playing on his face grew wider. He knew the girl in front of him was helpless. "Or what, little girl?" He taunted again, pulling her wrist by force towards him. "Or I'll break your fucking hands." There was a familiar voice that responded to the man's taunt, and it made the hairs on Violet's skin shivered. She looked behind the man and saw a tall figure she had been seeing in her dreams for the past week. It was Damon Van Zandt, the devil in the flesh.